Hello, and welcome to episode 15 of Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you didn't want the answer to. I'm Sean.
And I'm Vib, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about. Before we get to the episode, let's award the much vaunted Expertise is Overrated Tinfoil Award.
Now, as a reminder, this is an award that we give out at the start of each episode to the person who had the most ridiculous point in last week's episode. And this week, it's very exciting because neither of us gets it.
I know!
That doesn't mean there isn't tinfoil.
It absolutely does not.
I know you're listening.
Yeah, Ellie. Thanks for coming on the show, but have a tinfoil hat.
We do need to... I think we need to start making people tinfoil hats.
I think we do, and we send them out as little trophies for being stupid enough to come on the show. This one I think is very apt, though, because Ellie, in fact, is getting a tinfoil hat for suggesting muggles should wear tinfoil hats to ward off legitimacy.
Yes. I don't really have much to say about that. It was your first encounter with Ellie, but, like...
It was indeed, yes.
That's pretty par for the course. It was exceptional, though. We loved having you on, Ellie, and hopefully our listeners did too. And your tinfoil hat is in the post.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a pleasure meeting you. Sort of voice to voice, which is a weird thing to say. Please do come back. I always like the opportunity to give the tinfoil hat to someone who isn't me, so you know.
Yeah, you've had a nice respite this...
I know, it was looking kind of bad for me there, wasn't it, for the longest time?
On the trot. I do think, I've been thinking, by the way, and I do think that the idea of one episode where each of us has like 3 or 4 small hot takes.
Ooh, a mini hot takes episode.
Mini hot takes. Because, you know, there are a few out there that like there's not really enough material for to do a whole hour-long rant about something. I mean, we could do it.
I'd say we could do it.
Once we get into it, but
we could definitely do it.
There's maybe something to be said for that.
I think that's a great idea. Listeners,
let us know
if you would like that. And come join the Discord to tell us.
Join the Discord. The link is in the description, and it's a fun place. Honest.
Well, it will be.
Well, at the moment, it's
just the two of us.
And Otter.
Sorry. Otter is leaving some very good feedback on there, which I highly recommend people go and read in detail.
We got an essay on genetics for our Lord of the Rings episode, which we're not going to go into here because it confused me. But it was quite something.
It was quite something. Anyway, why are we here today?
Today we're talking George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire pentology? Heptology, I think it's going to be.
I think it's unfinished.
Unfinished tale. And what we wanted to do in sort of going back to our roots as those who rank things is we've pulled together a couple of lists of who we think the best warriors in the A Song of Ice and Fire books are. Is that a fair summation of what we've done?
I think it is. This is sort of what we'd originally said, and already that's kind of the problem. I mean, maybe not a problem, but it's going to create some issues, I think, because there's a lot of definitions of the term. Well, not definitions maybe, but interpretations of that little statement. Top 10 warriors of A Song of Ice and Fire.
Sure.
And I honestly don't really know what those interpretations were for me.
No, I've very much gone, shit, who's in A Song of Ice and Fire?
There was a lot of that.
Right. There's a lot of characters. No wonder it's taken so long to write.
Did you have that thing? So my original thought was, oh fuck, I haven't remembered a single character in A Song of Ice and Fire. And then before I knew it, I had a list of about 40 people.
I didn't have that, sadly. So not sure it's sadly. I've been listening to some A Song of Ice and Fire podcasts, particularly the Notacast, which I would highly recommend. It's a phenomenal,
very good
reread podcast. So no, my problem was more. I was thinking, Stannis is a big character in A Song of Ice and Fire. How do I get him in? And then I remembered that no, that's not his forte.
it,
Basically,
it's problematic though, isn't it? Because you obviously instantly think of the point of view characters. You're like, oh yeah, Sansa,
I think that.
top
Well, I
10
think there's
warrior.
there's a couple. There's something to come on to there. I think, but no, I sort of went who beats who 1v1.
I think
Kind of what
that's
I've done.
interesting.
But then there's a couple in my list who are quite high. I think because of their ability to do huge amounts of damage to lots of people.
See, I think that's something I weighted a bit more. Actually, I think I've got a few names in there that are probably just, chuck them at a shield wall and the shield wall will just end,
Yeah.
as opposed to the 1v1 prowess.
Yeah, no, I think I've probably weighed 1v1 higher, probably.
Let's
And I'm
just
also
cut to the chase and say we're both going to be very wrong about all of this, aren't we?
no, you see, I think we're both going to be more or less correct. I'm looking at my list and I've realised I've got one that's probably too high. But like, the point is, I think that you can define a top 10 warrior in so many different ways that our our argument is going to be about definition rather than about the specific location of anyone in our lists, more or less.
Probably, yeah. And I think there's also just too much of an unknown, right? I mean,
I
the
think
fact that all
there's
these guys are alive, well, maybe they're alive. I don't actually
ish.
know if that's going to be true of the list. But certainly the ones that are in the current story, obviously alive and will have been in a scrap.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot to be said for like in scraps like the ones that we're going to come on to discuss. Like luck plays such a bigger part than I think a lot of people realize. Right? Everyone thinks, oh, you can just rank all of the you rank everyone in any fantasy novel top to bottom based on their power level or whatever you want to be, and there is one true objective list. We just have to find it. And I don't think that's true. There's so much subjectivity and like random circumstance that means that any one of the people in any of our top 10 probably can beat anyone else in either top 10
Yeah,
if they have a good day and the other person has a bad day. If that makes sense, I'm not
yeah,
explaining it very
absolutely.
well.
And George actually, I think he was asked about this sort of thing. There was an interview I seem to recall where they were talking a bit about sport and if he draws any inspiration or
Yeah.
things like that from sport. And he's like, yeah, well, when he thinks about the knights in his tale, it's kind of their sport, right? Fighting
Yes.
and whatnot. The problem is, any given day, as you said, one guy can beat another guy.
Yeah.
And of course, the cost might be quite high if that happens. You can lose a hand because ultimately you're waving really sharp sticks around. So I think you're absolutely right that there's no one's going to go 10 for 10. And I think it's another thing George said is that even the best boxers in the world have lost a fight or two.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately just what will happen. Jaime Lannister, as an example, isn't going to win every single fight he is ever in.
No.
No matter how
He gets
good
caught
is.
at the Whispering Wood, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Circumstance gets in the way. So how have you formulated your list then? Did you set yourself any
what?
rules?
In a bit of a throwback to our Warhammer 40k Primarchs one, I think there's an element of just people I thought were really cool. Or that I liked in some particular way. There's some very, very solid pseudoscience that's gone into the list as well, mind you.
Excellent.
And I will claim victory off the back of that.
Fair.
But yeah, I think people that I've just picked and I thought, yeah, they'd be great in a scrap and they could probably stand up 1-to-1 against most. And that's sort of
Sure.
the list. But that said, I think the number 10 could be the number 1, and the number 1 could be the number 10 on any given day, as you said.
Okay.
How about you then? So you've gone literally dual ad attorney.
Well, not quite just that, but certainly that's played quite a heavy part. But no, I did something similar. I sort of went, if I teleport myself into the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I'm standing there holding a shield with a pointy stick, who do I least want to see coming at me?
Right? Interesting. So
that's probably going to prove to not be true when we get to like my number 10, but it's that sort of thing. Like,
but my first thought there was, have you gone something really rogue, like putting Jaqen on there, Jaqen Hagar? But then you would never see him coming at you. Would you?
I haven't done anything like that. Like, everyone in my list is a stand up in front of you and stab you in the chest type.
Yeah, sword in hand,
right, sword
or spear or lance
or hammer or whatever in hand. Spoilers.
Ooh, hammer, very interesting. Very interesting indeed.
But no, I sort of looked at who'd win a 1v1, but also definitely gone, yeah, but what happens if you, as you say, point them at a shield wall? So there's a few who are maybe in the list because of that. Their abilities have an impact on the battlefield. What I also did was I limited myself to people who we've seen alive in the text, because I basically didn't want to deal with Arthur Dayne.
A fair play on your part. Arthur Dayne is complicated,
but
and this is why, spoilers, Ned Stark is obviously ahead of him in my list.
Clearly. I also went obviously at their supposed prime.
Yes.
Right? So I've got Jaime in my list, as I imagine you have. I've got two-handed Jaime in my hand.
Oh, I've got one-handed, but he's still number 1. No,
Fair enough.
Absolutely right. I'm not even sure Jaime would have been at his prime, to be honest. I guess in his personal arc, that will pre-losing the hand will be the best he was ever going to be. I suppose. I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll surprise us all.
Sorry, not at their potential, at the prime that they reached.
Exactly. Well, then, without further ado, shall we just actually get cracking with this list and stop dithering about our terrible choices and all the regret that we feel?
Right. Do you want to go first?
I'll go first. Yeah, and this one's always confused me in terms of how to say the first name. It is Lord Gerald Hightower or Gerald.
Yeah. I'm sure it's Gerald. I'm sure
Gerald
it's
Hightower.
Cool. No, that's fair. I've got Victorian Greyjoy at number 10.
Yeah, see, I was going to try and be nice to you for this episode, but that's just wrong. I'm sorry, that's just wrong.
Okay.
He's not even the best. No, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Who have you got at number 9?
Loras Tyrell.
Oh, interesting. I've got his brother, Garland Tyrell.
Okay. And then at 8?
The Great John himself, Great John Umber.
Interesting. Now, I had thought about him. I've got Sandor Clegane.
Great John, not gonna lie, is one of those where he's just very cool.
He's just very cool.
So you got Sandor, the Hound,
Sandor
very nice.
At 8, and then I've got Brienne of Tarth at 7.
Yeah, very sensible. I've got the Mountain at 7.
Okay. Cool. And then at 6,
the Hound.
Okay, interesting.
Clegane Bowl is 6 and 7.
Clegane Bowl at 6 and 7. I've got Garland Tyrell at 6. So he did make my list. I've just put him very high by the sound of things.
No, I mean, well, we'll see. So top 5, who have you got?
Top 5. Okay, so opening up the top 5, I'm going to change my list as we speak. I've got Oberyn Martell.
Ooh, changing the list last second. That's going to be
I actually panicked.
That might be some sort of tinfoil-esque penalty for next episode.
I've got Oberyn Martell. Who have you got?
Oberyn Martell. Number 5, I've got Jaime Lannister.
Yeah, fair.
Quite low, I think some people will argue.
I think that feels low to me.
Maybe I need to change my list too. We'll get there. But yeah, so at number 4, I've got Barristan Selmy.
You got Barristan Selmy? Number 4, I've got Robert Baratheon.
Robert Baratheon, interesting choice.
This is Robert's Rebellion era, muscled like a maiden's fancy.
Yeah, no, fair
Robert
enough.
Baratheon, not Fat
I mean,
King Bobby
foolish.
B.
Top number 4 in a top 10 list of greatest warriors. You're insane. Who have you got at 3?
Gregor Clegane, the Mountain.
Yeah, fair enough. I've got Drogo, the sort of
Yeah,
Kalasar equivalent of the Mountain. I always picture him as.
yeah, no. He feels like the most notable omission from my list, I think.
He's not even made your
He's
list.
not made my
Ooh,
list.
interesting.
I think I've fallen foul of. Well, we can come on to that. Who have you
He's
got
not
at
made
3?
your list, and my number 2 is going to annoy you as well because it is in fact Arthur Dane.
It's definitely cheating. No, I mean you've got Gerald Hightower as well. You've bought into the romance of the rebellion.
I have. I really have. I mean, we'll see who my number 1 is for that.
No, so my number 2 is Jaime Lannister.
Okay. I feel I could probably guess who your number 1 is off the back of all that then, but
Yeah, I have a notable omission, don't I?
go on. Who's made the top of your weird
Top
list?
of my list is Barristan Selmy, Lord Commander of Robert
Barristan
Baratheon's
Selmy,
kingdom.
very, very honourable man, very good swordsman, very, very apt warrior. I think worthy of a number 1 spot. So for me, I guess you think I was going to say
worthy of a number 1 spot. You've got him at 4.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's not worthy of the number 1 spot. I just think that there's 3 people who are worthier. I think people may be thinking I'm going towards Rhaegar Targaryen at my number 1 spot, but in fact,
That would be insanity.
In fact, I have gone for Bobby B. Big Robert Baratheon, number 1 greatest warrior in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Okay.
At his prime and when he's really fat and drunk all the time.
Both.
Because he will just yell people into the grave, I think.
Oh, Mark, have you just got Mark Addy as your number 1?
Maybe that's it. I think I've just got Mark Addy at number 1. Yeah. Although by that logic, I would have had Sean Bean joined first.
Sean Bean's joint. Yeah, I am. Okay, well, I mean, these are very different lists.
Different, but also similar in parts.
So, the notable ones on my list that you don't have, running down this, you don't have Oberyn,
No.
You don't have Brienne, you don't have Loras, and you don't have Victarion.
Well, no one should have Victarion, because that's just dumb.
Fair.
Brienne is, I think, one that we should debate, because now looking at my list, and also noting where you've put Brienne, specifically in relation to Sandor,
Yes.
I might be very mistaken about her.
Well, maybe. I may also be... As you bought into the romance of the rebellion, I might have bought a little bit too much into Brienne as a sort of questing knight trope.
Sure.
And she has some of the best moments in the books, right? Her at the end of the crossroads, no chance and no choice, is sort of phenomenal. Sends shivers down your spine when you read it, kind of thing. So I might be reading that and then going, yeah, fuck yeah, yes, Brienne, you're great. She does then proceed to lose the fight at the end of the crossroads and is saved by Gendry. So,
Yeah, but some fights you can't. And this is true of all of this, right? It's not high fantasy in the sense of
Brienne doesn't beat whatever it is 7 heavily armed men, because
exactly, and no one on this list. Well, maybe on a good day, a few people on this list probably would actually. But I also think Brienne on a really good day could have
potentially. She's not well armed and armored at that point. She basically draws a shitty. Well, she draws Oathkeeper, I suppose.
Shitty sword.
Take that back. But she's not wearing heavy armor. She's not a horse, anything like that. But no, looking at your list and parking Arthur Dane and Gerald Hightower, because they weren't eligible for my list. Although, hot take, Arthur Dane was. I think Great John Umber and Drogo.
Yes. But this I think is where the difference in our logic approaching this is a bit apparent, right? Because I don't think anyone really talks about Great John Umber as he's going to rock up at the tourneys and win the duels.
Well,
I think he's the guy who just wins the battle for you.
But I suppose the problem is we don't have a particularly military-minded perspective on Robb Stark's campaign, particularly not his campaign in the Westerlands.
No,
right? But
true.
even his POV in the Riverlands is Catelyn, who is a very romantically leaning point of view. Right, so we don't actually ever see, other than at the twins at the Red Wedding, we never see the Great John fight. And I love the Great John. I think the Great John.
He does absolutely ruin 3 guys while he is like blackout drunk and
true,
unarmed.
True, but I think that the Great John, I sort of picture him not quite as a strategist, because that's too removed from the action, but like this is very unfair to the Great John. Isn't he just a really budget mountain?
No, see, I think he's a really budget giant.
Okay, but isn't the mountain just a budget giant?
Let me paraphrase. He's a budget giant and a budget Tywin. Actually, that's completely wrong because Tywin's an idiot. A budget
Blackfish.
Theon Stark.
Okay.
Blackfish as well. Yeah, I think you're right. He's very strategically minded, and he's very well respected in the North. And the problem with the North is one that I'll get to.
They don't do tourneys.
They don't do tourneys, and you only ever see Northern laws really described from Northern POVs, and it's problematic.
That's fair.
But I see him as he's a strategist. But I think if you anger him, or if he's in a battle, he just sort of unleashes and you can't get near him. And he just kills things.
I mean, he's a big man, right? George has no concept of height, so isn't he like 6'6", 6'7" kind of thing?
Something along those lines, I think.
Because
he's
the
like
Small John is bigger
large.
than him, and Small John is like the biggest person since Robert, kind of.
But thing. I also want to say, is it Jaime Lannister who discusses these sort of things like strength alone?
So Jaime Lannister. So this is the problem with Jaime Lannister. Is Jaime Lannister has an internal monologue about essentially who he can beat in a fight.
Yeah,
and he lists people who are stronger than him, and I think he lists Small John, but not Great John.
Oh, is it Small John? I really thought it was the Great John.
That's
kind of why he made my list, to be honest.
It might well be the Great John. I don't remember it off the top of my head. One of them makes it, but not both of them, because both Cleganes make it, but not both Umbers.
Yeah, well, the Mountain, I think, infamously makes it both because his strength is just not that of something that isn't human. I can't remember how he says it.
Yeah. Maybe that's No, that's Bronn.
Maybe I've made that up. Maybe that's just how I thought.
No, so Bronn talks about how the Mountain is too fast for something that big.
Yeah, but I thought Jamie mentioned that he's just too strong.
He might well do. He might
like a regular dude.
He might.
But this was important for me in terms of putting the Great John on there, because it was very rare, I thought, to see any Northern Lord who isn't, Robb Stark, I guess, or Ned Stark, talked about in a sort of they're kind of scary and important way.
That's very true. That is very true.
Which may be because there genuinely aren't any big warrior lords in the North, which seems a bit odd, I guess.
Seems quite odd.
It's just the classic, the South doesn't care,
I think it's that. I think that because the South has this tradition of sort of tournaments and chivalry and all of that, and also the sort of aloofness of Southern lords as compared, at least on the outside, with Northern lords, the Southern Lords have this fixation with who's the best tourney knight, who
Yeah,
wins the hands tourney, etc., etc., etc. And the Northern Lords sort of don't, because they're busy making sure that their people don't all die in the winter.
yeah.
That's not to
And
say
when they need to scrap, they'll scrap.
when they need to scrap, they scrap. But they also you also get the sense a little bit that a lot more, and maybe I'm again doing the Southern Lords a disservice, but you get the sense that a lot more Northern Lords will just ride in the front line with their troops, and you see the way you think Robb Stark's companions in the Whispering Wood, right? They're all first or second sons of noble houses. Rickard Karstark loses like 3 sons in the Whispering Wood,
Yeah.
which is horrific for a noble family. You don't, in the same way, get the sense that that happens in the South. You think about like Mace Tyrell, Randall Tarley, people like that. Randall Tarley maybe less so, but they're sort of lead from the back. Randall Tarley's not on either of our lists. There's a thought.
Do we see him do anything? But he's always described, and I think you mentioned this in a previous episode, as more just
He's
a good soldier. I don't
described
really know
as
what that means.
He's described as the finest soldier in Westeros by, I think, Kevin Lannister.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah, that doesn't really explain it. But no, those Southern Lords feel more like they're in the second or the third or the fourth or the fifth rank. Like, they're there.
Yeah.
And once the shield wall is broken and all of that, they'll ride around and kill loads of peasants.
See, I know what you mean, but there may just be an age defense that kind of applies. I get the feeling a lot of the lords in the north are maybe younger, or they're just more evergreen. Perhaps because they're just used to, getting on with it. So they'll just, if there's a war, they'll fight because it's kind of what they need to do. Whereas in the south, because all the lords you sort of hear about are kind of old, right? I don't see Lord Tyrell doing anything himself.
No,
but we have. Well, you have both. Well, not both his sons, but 2 of his sons on there.
I do.
I've got 1, and Loras is a very sensible inclusion. He's definitely made my list of notables. He was in my top 10 at one point.
Okay, so do you mind if I ask who knocked him out? I don't know why I'm asking that so politely. Who knocked him out?
Well, to be honest, it took me a while to remember that Garland was a thing, so that he obviously replaced him first of all.
Yeah.
And then, because I think Garland's also much more impressive on the Blackwater, isn't he?
So Garland is the one who wears Renly's armor on the Blackwater.
And that sort of did it for me in terms of Loras. Like, yeah, sure, he's a great jousting knight. Gets beaten by Brienne though in the melee.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's not that impressive on the Blackwater.
Loras himself says Garland is the better sword.
Exactly. And so ultimately, I gave the nod to Gerald Hightower because he's one admittedly that I included because he's just really cool.
I think Jaime also includes him in this list of people that were stronger.
Yeah, but he's called the Bull or something. Isn't he? Like, he's ridiculous.
The White Bull.
I think I always picture him as a sort of Sir Duncan, the tall level character.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comparison.
Who actually wanted to include in the list, but I thought he was too far removed from a Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, because at that point you start talking,
bring in all the Targaryens,
Maegor, people like that, and then you've got all the old Kingsguard as well. That it just becomes
stupid, and then you can essentially put all of House Baratheon on there.
Yeah, you start adding the Laughing Storm and people like that. Anyway.
So yeah, Loras, very noteworthy, but yeah.
No, I think I've got him on this list. I think because he's meant to be so good with a lance, right? And if you're starting your 1v1 with like tilting at each other, Loras is almost certainly going to unhorse you.
Yeah,
we know he unhorsed Jaime Lannister at the Prince Joffrey's name day tournament before everything starts. We know obviously he beats Gregor, although he uses trickery. But he also doesn't use that much trickery.
He doesn't use that much trickery,
Right?
no.
He makes the Mountain's horse slightly less easy to control, but he's still got to knock an 8-foot man off his horse.
See, it's interesting though, because so the lance, or I guess the joust, to me was not even remotely a feature of my assessment.
Fair.
And the reason I said it, because jousting to me feels like, flair. It's complete. It's like doing trick shots when you're a really good snooker player. You don't need it.
I'm not sure that's
cool.
true though, because I understand.
But you never really see them ride into battle with their lance, and even if they do,
see, I think you do.
I don't know.
Well, there's a reason that charges of heavy cavalry were the defining
feature
of the battlefields of the Middle Ages, right?
But does the lance matter in that?
Yes, because it's a much easier way to transfer the power of a charging horse while having enough tightly packed people to get the full momentum of a cavalry charge. If they're not using lances and they're using swords instead, everyone's going to be 2 or 3 feet further apart from each other than they have to be if they're like pointing lances straight ahead.
That's true.
If you think about the sheer mass of a cavalry charge, and that's where it's dangerous, you want them closer together, and you need lances for that.
Exactly. So the individual lancer is, I don't want to say irrelevant because that's not true. But they're links in a chain, right?
They're links in a chain, but that doesn't mean that the skill of the individual lancer, when it's cavalry on cavalry, doesn't matter.
No, I agree, but I don't think Loras sets himself. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's entirely possible that
jousting is practice for war. Tourneys are practice for war, and there's a reason that they do jousting. That's my sort of
answer. No, fair. But this is what I say. I think I've actually got a sort of top 15, and Loras is in that list for sure.
Yeah, no, I think
there's also some great ones in there that I want to get onto at some point. But let's actually talk about the top 10.
I feel like I need to make the case for Victarion Greyjoy.
You really do, because this could be the same sort of prejudice that the Southerners have for the Northerners, having against the Ironborn, who are useless, to be clear.
No, they absolutely are, and Victarion Greyjoy is a fantastic character for no other reason than his inner monologue is hilarious. It's absolutely amazing. Victarion Greyjoy is also an awful, awful human being.
So you'd think usually I'd like him then.
Yeah, he sort of was expecting him at number. The reason that Victarion is so high on my list is he's one of the few characters in whose head we are during a fight that he wins and dominates.
Interesting.
Right, so we see him fighting a fleet action off the Shield Isles.
Yeah.
And he absolutely destroys everyone in front of him.
This is them sacking what's it called? The Reach, right?
It's the precursor to their sack of the Reach. Yes, they take the Shield Isles first. Victarion takes them for Euron, but he essentially does that through a fleet action off, I can't remember, Green Shield, I think, Oak Shield, I don't remember what they're called. But he beats a knight. He doesn't just beat a knight. This is the thing. He goes through a knight like a hot knife through butter. He's just I get the sense when I read his chapter that he is, on a ship at least, an absolute force of destruction, in the same way that I imagine Robert Baratheon was when he was young, the same way that we see Gregor is at the Green Fork, right? People who just on their own can change the tide of change the course of a battle. Now, 1v1, I don't think he's got much on anyone else in my list, but he seems to have so much raw power, strength, whatever you want to call it.
I know what you're saying. I mean, what you're saying is not incorrect, but it's still wrong.
That's a good trick.
Because I think you're right. Like he goes through a night, but then it's a Song of Ice and Fire, and you swing a cat, you hit a knight.
Very true.
And they're all pretty much rubbish. And
Also true.
my argument against having Victarion there is I think you could put certainly my top 10 and probably the next 5, if not 10 other people that I thought about in the same situation, and they would do just as well, if not better. Well, I don't know
That's where I'm not sure.
Right. I have nothing to base that on, but it wouldn't be expertise is overrated if I did. So
take your evidence and fuck off. So looking at, is there anyone? Yeah, I think he's like a great John Umber, to be honest with you.
Maybe. I mean, it's entirely possible. I just don't like the Greyjoys in there.
That's entirely possible. That's entirely possible. And Victarion is an odious man, and I wouldn't have much problem with replacing him with Drogo, for example. I think he actually might be just a shit Drogo, and I've got that one wrong.
So let's talk about that for a second, because he certainly is worse than Drogo.
I think that's
and yet Drogo is not on your list.
Except, and this is where the 1v1 thing comes into play, except Drogo doesn't wear armor and Victarion does. Victarion wears heavy full plate armor while on a ship, which is a pretty baller move. But I don't think you can devalue armor in the way that Drogo's like, oh fuck, I don't need armor, I'm that fucking good. And then he dies because like someone cuts
I see what you're saying, but counter argument: someone who made number 5 on your list wearing no armor beat someone number 3 on your list wearing much armor.
Yes, that's
and
true.
I think Drogo probably does what Oberyn does better, because he's used to just not wearing any armor, being really fast. I think he hits like a truck in a way that Oberyn doesn't.
I'm sure he does. Oberyn doesn't hit like a truck. So the reason Oberyn made my list is he kills Gregor.
No, absolutely.
And the 100%. Reason Oberyn is not any higher on my list than that is he kills Gregor because he cheats is the wrong word, but it gets across what I'm angling for.
He's practiced essentially that fight in his head.
Exactly.
Over and over.
He picks that fight perfectly. He does everything about that fight is set up so that he beats Gregor. He knows Gregor gets angry. He plays to Gregor's rage. He uses spears. He poisons his spears. Like, it's using exactly the right tool in the right circumstance. And that is a skill in and of itself. But I think if you put Oberyn on a battlefield, he's not as effective as Gregor. And he also does die in that fight.
Horribly, I might add.
And but you're somewhat done in by his own desire for vengeance.
Right? Yeah, I was going to say hubris, but that's not the right word at all. Desire for vengeance. Yeah, he gets caught up in it too much.
Well, he needs Gregor to say Tywin. That's what he's pointed his whole life at that.
Yeah, exactly. And then he fails.
But
preparation is a very important skill, and I think a skill every warrior should possess, and he showed that more than I think anyone. Because I consider Oberyn, I really like him as a character. I think he's fantastic. But I think I remember looking this up a while ago, and you essentially never see him in any other fight.
We know he beat Willis Tyrell in a joust.
Yeah, we do, but
we also know that Willis Tyrell was too young in that joust.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doran Martell rates him, but Doran also has gout, so I'm not sure his opinion counts.
Ouch.
he's never fought Oberyn, is my point. Right? No, he hasn't fought Oberyn and Ariohota, and so can say, oh yeah, Oberyn's scarier, right? Because he's just sitting there in a chair. So and obviously also Oberyn's his brother. I don't know.
And the problem with the Viper is he only has to nick
exactly
any part of you once and you're dead. But that's less him being a great warrior, because I don't know how useful that is as a skill to have on the battlefield.
Well, no, and this is I don't know what happens if you put Oberyn on a battlefield. I think he dies.
I imagine he must have been on a battlefield.
He must have done. But he's also weird. He's weirdly young as well.
True,
right? Because it's his uncle. His uncle is in Aerys Targaryen's Kingsguard.
Yeah, good credit. The Martells always confuse me. Well, all of them,
Yeah,
all of the families confuse me, but the Martells in particular.
Prince Lewin of Dorne, I'm fairly sure is their uncle. And he dies at the Trident. So I think he's young. He's younger than. Is he younger than Elia? I think he's younger than Elia.
Ooh.
I'm not sure though. I could easily be wrong about that. But I don't know how
I
many
don't
battles.
know about Elia. No, I've
I
got
don't know how
no
many.
idea.
I think we know he was in a sellsword company as well. Actually,
Yeah, but
now that I come
come
to it.
on. Speaking of sellswords, Bronn.
Yeah, I had a real problem with Bronn. I
Same.
think I think Braun's not on either of our lists, so let's come on to him and let's keep talking about our
Yeah,
lists.
that's all right. That is.
I'm
This is
gonna hold
this is the problem that I had. You see, just all these names pop in. You're like, oh yeah, they're really good.
I'm gonna hold my hand up and say that I think that you're probably right that Victarion is a knockoff Drogo. I don't know that Drogo makes my list though.
See, I find it really hard to put Victarion on and not Drogo if it's purely based on armor.
I don't I don't know that it's purely based on armor. There's something about Drogo.
It's really hard to
Only
picture, isn't it? Because obviously he's a Carl,
we
and
only
he's
ever
really
see,
successful.
we only ever see Drogo in one actual fight, and it's the fight that kills him.
Yeah, but that is hubris.
Nice, but hubris is danger. You shouldn't have you. I mean, he essentially allows someone to cut him just to prove that he doesn't care,
but
and that's the cut that kills him. So
but
that
we
plus
do
magic.
know that he is unbeaten in countless battles.
Yeah, but if the only people that you fight are the Lazarene, of course you're going to be unbeaten. No,
But even among the Carls, he
sorry,
is.
you are right. He is unbeaten, and that amongst the Dothraki that matters. I grant you.
But I take your point. It's really hard to picture, no matter how hard the TV show tried, and the TV show is excellent, as we know, that I think the Dothraki just lose in Westeros. Maybe with numbers, they do a lot of damage, and they are obviously all on horseback. But
The thing that I struggle with is Jorah Mormont.
oh no, there's one that we missed off.
Jorah Mormont, shit. I'm not having him anywhere near this list. Not having that.
Ouch.
Stupid, sexy, Ian Glenn notwithstanding, I'm not having Jorah Mormont on my list.
But Ian Glenn, exactly. He can be up there with Mark Addy and Sean Bean.
Yeah. But
That's a different list.
That's a different list. You have to pay extra for that list. No, I think the issue that I have, the issue that I have with a lot of the Dothraki is that Jorah Mormont is like a powerful warrior amongst the Dothraki, basically because he wears armor. And that's sort of it. And the Dothraki
you're doing him a bit of a disservice. He's pretty competent with a sword.
He's not bad with a sword, but he doesn't get anywhere near my list of top 10. He probably doesn't get near my list of top 15.
No, I probably agree with that.
But
this is again where I think I've included a sort of cool factor. And I think Drogo oozes. Cool.
No, I think that's true. And I also I wonder if I've been a little bit too influenced by the TV show for some characters here. Not Victarion, because he doesn't feature. But like
because he's shit, and the TV show producers were like, "We don't need him.
Yeah, we don't need that. That's too confusing."
We'll have a really weird Euron who's
just do Euron as Victarion.
Yeah,
that's actually that's who Euron in the show is. He's just Victarion.
Exactly, because the show is excellent.
Yeah, don't need Mad Pirate Wizard.
Don't need Mad Pirate Wizard. Yeah, so Sandor, and obviously you got Brienne ahead. I think that's a TV show influence. No,
Brienne better than Sandor? I don't know. So I find Brienne so difficult. So I don't. She beats Loras in the melee. Right, she wins the melee at Bitterbridge.
She does. But you're essentially suggesting that Brienne beats Sandor in a 1-on-1.
I am suggesting that.
And that Brienne is also better to have in a fight than Sandor.
So that
I guess
I
the
will.
Blackwater kind of shows you that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think I would probably say that Brienne does beat Sandor 1v1, but you probably want Sandor on a battlefield.
If there's no fire.
Provided nothing is on fire.
Nothing is ever on fire. I don't know. I think both characters still have a lot of stories to tell.
Absolutely, and that you're right. That could well be a TV show ism, because she does beat Sandor in the TV show.
Exactly. I do think I've done Brienne a massive disservice by not having on the list. She was another one who's just I didn't know where to put her.
So you should. So I don't know where you go. So no.
So you're not on the list. Whereas I wanted the Hound and Mountain because I think, yeah, they're just really evocative warriors in my head canon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're the guys who, you know, you throw them into the Reach and shit will happen.
Absolutely, and I think Sandor more so than Brienne. There, you put
exactly. There's something about her. Maybe she's just untested in that sort of environment.
That's the other thing, right? Brienne is incredibly young.
Yeah,
in A Song of Ice, they all are, because George Martin doesn't understand age. But
especially the fact that women can be, you know, as old as men at sometimes.
It doesn't sound true to me.
No, apparently not. No,
but
every man has to be at least 18 and over, and every woman has to be 18 or younger, almost. Anyway, that's a whole separate thing.
That's a whole other thing. I don't know. I'm going to stick to Brienne at 7, Sandor at 8. But
no, I don't hate it. For me, what I really wanted was the Hound and the Mountain. I know. She's nowhere near the list, but I don't hate your opinion on this.
No,
usually
one of the few things.
But I wanted to put the Hound above the Mountain, and this might be a TV showism. But okay. I do genuinely think we will get Clegane Bowl in the books in some form, and I think the Hound will win? ?
Well, the big question is, does
He'll
he
win? But will he also lose?
You see, I don't want Clegane Bowl. It was right. It was right for the show. It was absolutely right for the show. It was the way they took the Hound's character. It was fine. But in the books, right? If we assume that that Sandor has become the gravedigger on the Quiet Isle, I just want him to stay there. I want him to understand that he doesn't need the revenge against his brother. That's not a fulfilling life for him.
I agree with that. But you know what I picture actually Clegane Bowl being in the books is just in the midst of a big battle, like think Battle of the Bastards levels of confusing. No one knows what's going on. I essentially just want the Hound to cut down the mountain without even realizing.
That would be
because what it does is give him the revenge he's always sought after and have it not be a big moment.
Not have it be the apex of his character. That's the issue that I have with Clegane Bowl is Sandor's character is going in such a direction that Clegane Bowl doesn't narratively work for me.
Exactly. But I also would like to see the mountain just randomly cut down.
Yeah.
and get no ceremony after that. Just like he's just there, he's dead, no one gives a shit, and we move on with our lives.
I feel like he could die during the sack of King's Landing, and that would be fine.
I like how you're saying it, is that that's going to definitely happen.
It's 100% going to happen.
Wow, okay.
100% it's going to happen.
Well, let me make a note of this particular sentence, because I feel it might come up next week.
You can give it to me if you want. It's going right to the top of my tinfoil off list.
The tinfoil off. What? No, fair enough. The sack of King's Landing. Yeah, you might be right.
I am right.
Okay. So I mean, the rest of our lists, I think actually the top 5, or top 4 certainly is very similar. If we for 1 second pretend I don't have Arthur Dane in my list.
Pretend you don't have Arthur Dane at number 2.
And we've got Barristan, we've got Jaime, we've got Robert all up there. I mean, how can you argue with Bobby B, right? He's just a glorious vision of power, strength, and shit will die in his wake.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. I think the reason that I've got him below Gregor is I think that people misunderstand just how valuable being 8 foot tall is.
No, true.
Like,
True,
or
but
however tall the
also
mountain is meant to be. But like, he does shit that should not be physically possible. He wields a great sword and a shield. He wears armor that no one else can put on. Like that has a value all of its own. And yeah, he might not be the most skilled person on my list, but it goes back to the Bron comment, right? I make
these. Yeah,
one mistake, I'm just fucking dead, right? And the Mountain is one of the few people on these lists where that's true. Like, there, you might have a margin of error, even fighting someone like Barristan, right? You slip slightly, and Barristan has the advantage, but it's not the same as fighting someone who essentially just breaks the laws of physics as the Mountain does.
yeah, and the reason Oberyn beats him is because he has so much space to work with. You know, he
Exactly.
can be agile. But the part of me sometimes pictures the Mountain a bit like, you know, one of the sort of bigger single model entities in Total War Warhammer. You know, where they kind of get bogged down and they just get stabbed by lots of little units near them.
No, absolutely. I
I
think
mean,
that's
I wouldn't want to be one of those small units near him because
no,
my
because
head will just go.
you will die. But
I
so
quite like my head.
putting take say Gregor and Robert, right? Robert's favorite weapon is a warhammer, which actually is probably the best thing other than a spear to use against someone like Gregor. But I just worry, like, if the Mountain's armor is really like 3 or 4 inches thick, as it's said to be, isn't like Robert's got to get inside the reach of a 6 foot long sword and then swing his hammer hard enough to do damage to that armor plating and not die on the backswing. Like, that's
Yeah.
incredibly difficult.
So Robert's confusing because I have no clue how tall he is.
He's meant to be, I think, like 6'7", 6'8", like same
I know,
size as the Great John,
but
basically.
it's another thing with George Martin, isn't it? Where all the women are way too young and all the
All the
men
men
are
are
way
too
too
tall.
tall. They're all 6'7", average height.
Yeah,
Um, I think Robert is in his prime, obviously skilled enough as a warrior to just negate Gregor, and I think you're right. Gregor doesn't strike me as technically the most gifted because he doesn't need to be.
no, I think that's definitely true. Size is a skill all of its own.
Yeah, but I think Robert has. I mean, he's obviously not as tall, but he's big. He's
Yes.
really strong, like super strong. And I think he's got the technique to just negate this. I mean, because imagine hitting your sword against a warhammer. That's going to reverberate.
True.
And I think Robert's skilled enough to make that hurt.
I know, absolutely. I think
So one on
actually
one, I think Bobby B beats Gregor.
that's quite
Just
possibly true.
putting it out there.
That's quite possibly true. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why he's number one.
That's why he's number one for you. I've got Jaime and Barristan above both of them.
It says a lot about what you thought about with this list, I think, because they're both essentially the same
Yes,
type
they
of warrior
absolutely
in my
are.
eyes.
They absolutely are. And Barristan, we've both got Barristan above Jaime, which I don't
But
think.
Jamie just hasn't proved. I mean, Barristan, the guy's just a stone cold legend. I mean, come on, he
No,
sneaks
absolutely.
into a castle and gets the king out all by
Yeah,
himself.
he
Like Jamie's not
absolutely
done
is.
that.
No,
Not saying he couldn't, but well, I
I,
don't think he could anymore.
I think Martin has come out and said that Jaime
Is the
Jamie
best
is the
living
best warrior in A
swordsman.
Song of Ice and Fire. I think.
He has. But we're comparing Jamie, who is in his prime at the start of Song of Ice and Fire, or at least getting there.
Yeah.
Whereas Barristan no longer is. I think Barristan in his prime.
No, absolutely.
Maybe. I mean, that's a fight I think everyone would want to see.
I think so, definitely.
I mean, Barristan speaks very highly of him, right? So
He does. He does. I think that's probably Jamie's biggest plus point is how highly Barristan and others of a equivalent stature think of him.
But I also think, doesn't Barrister compare him to a certain Arthur Dane
Maybe.
as a form of praise, and yet Arthur Dane is not on your list.
Because Arthur Dane, well, other than the fact that Arthur Dane is Corin Halfhand, Arthur Dane is dead as of the start of Song of
Who is
Ice and
also
Fire.
not on your list.
No, because I didn't want to
You've given yourself double tinfoil.
didn't want to just give you tinfoil options for me. But no, so Corin Halfhand isn't on my list for the simple reason that everything we see about Corin, everything we know about Corin Halfhand's ability as a warrior is secondhand. We see very little of his own prowess other than in the fight against Jon. And yes, Jon is meant to be very good with a sword, but Jon is also 16 years old. Right? So
yeah,
I'm not surprised
but the real hidden talent in that fight, I think, is how Corin loses.
He loses
by
while
design.
looking like he's trying to win, yes.
Exactly. Which,
and that's
I don't
phenomenally
even know how you
impressive.
do that.
While fighting with your wrong hand. Let's not forget. So
exactly. Yeah.
My problem with Corin Halfhand is that I don't know how good he was before he lost half of his right hand.
Agreed.
Now, my theory is that he was Arthur Dane. I don't have much evidence for it other than the fact that Corin Halfhand is still
I think we have
really
to end
good.
the episode there, to be honest. I'm not sure I've got it in me to go into this rabbit hole.
That's going in my short hot take.
Oh, that's more than a short hot take.
I don't know, because I'd have to do a lot of research.
I know, because it's nonsense.
Right. But no, that's why Corin doesn't make my list. And Arthur Dane doesn't make my list because he's dead as of the start of A Song of Ice and Fire. And thus was not eligible for my list. In the same way that...
Yeah, you've just done that so you didn't have to think about Arthur Dane.
Yeah, no, I would have put Arthur Dane 1. I would have put Arthur Dane as number 1 on my list.
Yeah.
Hands down.
The problem I kind of have with Arthur Dane is a lot of being a knight is about having the story, right? And I think he, more than anyone, had the story.
Absolutely.
He's a bit like how I always pictured Federer in his prime. You know, you don't want to play Roger Federer because he's Roger Federer, and you know that. But the moment you step onto the court with him, you are going to lose, and so you've already lost because you think that way. I think Arthur Dane does that to the people he's fighting.
I think that's probably true, but I also think that, to use your Federer analogy, Federer had that reputation for a reason, right? It didn't come out of nowhere.
Yes.
Right? Federer was the favourite in every single one of his games, even when he was playing Djokovic or Nadal for so much of his career, because he just was that fucking good.
But that's because we got to see that. We never get to see Arthur Dane do anything.
No, but we do have the testimony of someone who has seen a lot of the people on your list in particular fight, and that's Ned. And Ned Stark tells Bran that Arthur Dane was the best knight he ever saw.
Yeah, but Ned Stark could mean a lot of things by saying he was the best. True. Because Ned Stark values some very important things.
That's very true.
Because what he might mean by that, and I guess we'll have to borrow the TV show here, is that he regarded him so highly because he stood by his duty to the very end, knowing he was going to die off the back of it.
True. The problem that I have is I
don't know why I'm arguing this, because he's number 2 on my list, because I genuinely do think he would take names on the battlefield.
I think
nobody's business.
He beat... The reason he doesn't make my list is really, really simple, and it's because I set myself rules such that I didn't have to think about it.
No, but that's fair. That's absolutely fair.
But
and you said if you
I think he goes near the top. I think he's almost certainly better than Barristan Selmy, right? So if he's not, isn't it just Jaime is a knockoff Barristan, who is a knockoff Arthur Dane, who is a knockoff Aemon the Dragon Knight?
The problem there is that we sort of only ever see that from their perspectives, right? Because Barristan looks at himself and thinks, "Oh, I'm just a bit of a shit version of Arthur," and then Jaime's like, "Oh, I'm just a bit of a shit version of Barristan."
Yeah.
Whereas then we see Barristan say about Jaime that he's probably actually really good.
No, absolutely.
So that's interesting. So I mean, ultimately, we're not disagreeing too much. Victarion's the big no for me.
Victarion is the big tension point. I don't have a lot of time for Gerald Hightower. I don't know why. It might be that he's overshadowed by Arthur Dayne, right? But I think
maybe, but for me, there's a romantic element because he's a bit like Barristan, right? He's kind of old, and yet he's still
absolutely
this really feared unit.
Definitely.
And he died on the job, older than most, I think, which says something.
This is the other issue I have. I don't know what happened at the Tower of Joy, actually. And until I get the answer to that question, I'm not going to be able to judge.
Perhaps he's also just north of the wall with.
It's true. It's true. It could be. Tormund Giantsbane, after all, needs to be someone.
He does need to be someone. Maybe he's Gerald Hightower. Maybe we could put all the guys from the Tower in the north somehow.
That'd be so good.
One of them is Mance Rayder, obviously.
Mance Rayder is just Mance Rayder.
Right, so let's see some notable omissions. Who have you got that was sort of close but not quite there for you?
Corin Halfhand, and Arthur Dayne, as we've
for me as well. Corin, I thought about Corin.
Strong Belwas.
Yeah, now he's fascinating, isn't he?
I don't know what I want to do with Strong Belwas.
Have we seen him do anything? I couldn't remember.
He wins the duel outside Yunkai, I think. Doesn't he? Because he does the thing. Dario Naharis does it in the show. But I was
going to say, is that Belwas doing it in the book?
It's Belwas in the. I'm fairly sure it's Belwas in the book.
Makes sense,
but I don't know.
I mean, he's called Strong, right?
Which he's called Strong.
Makes you wonder.
Barristan serves him, right, and tends him. So I think he's probably tidy, but we just don't have enough data.
No, but he's one. Interesting. Like you don't create a character like that without eventually making him do something.
No,
I think
that's true. I've also got Ario Hota.
Yeah, well, very similar, I suppose.
I think very similar. The difference is we know that Ario Hota is a tidy fighter because he
absolutely ruins Aerys Oakheart.
Absolutely ruins Aerys Oakheart, who I think we're told is probably the best Kingsguard.
Not including Jaime and
not including Jaime and probably not including Loras either, because Loras is Kingsguard at that point. But like, he's better than all the others.
He is, but he's also too honourable and too in love and does stupid things and gets shot by multiple crossbolts by the time Aryo chops his head off. So, yeah, I actually considered Aerys Oakheart at some point, but he's just a bit. He just dies a bit too.
Being the third best Kingsguard in a not impressive Kingsguard isn't that high praise.
No, indeed.
Right,
but Aryo Hota,
yeah.
I think we could see great things from him. Maybe
he just falls victim to lack of data, I think.
Also in the show, fantastic, guy playing him. He just looks like an absolute unit that you would never want to cross in a million years.
Shit.
Yeah, but then
even I, who have nothing but praise for the book for the show, would have quite liked them to have done Dorne better.
Yeah, no, I mean, not better, just different, because it was really good in the show.
Sorry, true.
Just different, please, different. Someone
make it different.
Do it different.
Well, who else have you got? You're. It sounds like you have a very long list of notable omissions. Should we run through it? We've been rapping for a while. I feel like.
I'll just throw some names out there, and you stop me. So, when I thought of the Great John, I also thought of Bronzion Royce.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I can see that. I think he's
similar, and I thought, not to the Vale, because they get no love in this department otherwise.
True, very true.
I thought of Rhaegar, because he does wound Bobby B, and I think he's supposed to be quite an apt.
He's
warrior.
tidy.
He just doesn't want to be one.
He's tidy. I see. It seems I must be a warrior. I think
exactly. Yeah.
He wins the tourney of Harrenhal, which has got to be a feather in his cap, right? Because he unseats people like Arthur Dayne.
Exactly.
And I think he unseats Barristan Selmy as well. But
he does well enough to get, to the Trident, which is, I think, is sort of...
But I've always assumed that what happened at the Trident was Rhaegar hung back until he saw Robert, and Robert was on the front lines just the whole way through.
Maybe. That doesn't
that...
strike me as particularly in keeping with his character, though, because insofar that he doesn't want to be a warrior, I think when he is one, he is proper one,
I just don't think we've got enough.
No, I know, but this is why ultimately he didn't really make it.
I don't think we've got enough data, and I don't... He's never...
we technically have as much data about him as we do about Robert, and we both put him in the top, however many.
We've got more eyewitness accounts of Robert than we do.
But, Victor always writes the text.
I don't know. I've always thought of Rhaegar as a bit... Yes, he's a reluctant warrior, but I don't know. I don't
know. He's complicated. He's complicated.
Maybe it's because I probably, compared to you, devalue Robert, and so because you think Robert's the best warrior in A Song of Ice and Fire, which I don't think is an unreasonable contention. The fact that Rhaegar wounds him is very high. I look at that and go, Robert's been fighting a war for like 6 months non-stop. He's absolutely bloody exhausted and blind with rage by the time he sees Rhaegar at the Trident.
Indeed, yeah.
So I think that's the distinction for me. I think it's right that he's not on your list. I think it's probably fair that he's near your list.
Yeah, I think he just deserves a little bit of a shout out. And obviously Loras Tyrell, we've talked about him. And then there's two that popped into my head, and purely because the idea of them is so great. I mean, Thoros of Myr, because he charges through the breach at
the Siege of Pike,
exactly, and is just all eyewitness accounts just say what a fucking legend.
Yeah, I think he was probably drunk, but
he was probably drunk, but he just kicked ass and didn't really care.
Yeah.
And I rate that highly. And then Beric. Because I think he's a very able warrior.
I think Beric Dondarrion is an absolute middle of the road B tier warrior.
Yes, but a middle of the road B tier warrior who keeps coming back.
I'm not having that.
is many B tier warriors, and therefore probably an A tier warrior.
He doesn't come back during the fights.
You don't know that, and the reason I've put him here is in a notable shout out is because I knew it would annoy you.
No, I can see it. I can see why you put him there. I think he's one of a number of like decent warriors that we see.
Yeah,
right. He's in there probably with a lot of Renly's Rainbow Guard, right? Red Ronnet Connington and people like that. It's just they're tidy, but they're not stand out. And the thing that makes Beric special isn't his martial prowess at all. It's his attitude and his...
Yeah, exactly. And again, he's just quite cool to me. And then a bunch of other names that I'll just sort of rattle. I mean, you've mentioned a few: Corran, Belwas, Oberyn, Brienne, Bronn. We've mentioned Jon Snow. I've put in there, but we've just not seen him at his prime. I think Robb Stark I put in there because again we never really got to see him in his prime, but he showed great promise because he led did. From the front and survived. I put Ned Stark because for me he's always been a real mystery. Like he was in a lot of wars and again survived them. He was in a lot of battles in a war,
which is not nothing.
Which is not nothing. But he's that classic Northern Lord where he doesn't really do tourneys, so who really knows?
Ned's always struck me as... I think Sean Bean... I'm about to speak heresy. I think Sean Bean did Ned a bit too much of a service. Right? Ned is not Boromir.
No, I totally get that. But I think Ned to me is a bit like Rhaegar. It's like he doesn't really...
Yeah, I think that's
it's not
fair.
What he wants, but when he does it, he's actually quite good at it. I think, he's probably more of a strategist and...
I'd almost certainly just put him in the same bracket as Beric, I think.
Maybe. I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know.
Never know. And another one that was a real mystery to me was Dario, but I think maybe I got confused because I was thinking mainly about that scene in the show where he wins that battle. But yeah, you're right. It's not actually him. So who knows?
I don't know. I find Dario Nahara is really difficult to think about. I just don't quite understand why he
It's the
exists.
blue hair. I mean, come on, it's
Yeah.
crazy. And then just to have a nod at non-Westerosi, I've also got Caro Valentin, the current first sword of Bravos, and Syria Farrell. Admirable. I don't think they necessarily stand up to the Westerosi elite. It's hard to know. Bravos is much smaller, obviously.
I don't know.
They've got style, at
They've
least
got
Syria
style.
has style.
Syrio's last stand is the first like air punch moment of the books, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely is.
So I thought I'd just give them a quick shout. And then I also had Lynn Corbray, who's
I think Lynn Corbray is a famous sword, rather than
yeah. And this is why I just had nothing to go on, really. Other than he gets mentioned a lot.
Lots of people call him very dangerous, but Valyrian steel is almost certainly just a game changer.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
It's meant to be lighter, faster, sharper, etc., which in duels is probably really important. And it sort of sounds like Lynn Corbray is fighting Renaissance style duels before they're fashionable. So
I kind of see what you mean by that, yeah.
So maybe
there was just not enough to go on, really. I thought, and then just to end on it for me, there was also a few characters that I thought of instantly, but I thought would just be a bit too dirty to mention.
Mm-hmm.
The giants beyond the wall. 3 very big characters, literally, Drogon, Rhaegal, Viserion.
Right. Okay.
I think they'd probably do quite well in both a one-on-one and
all right.
a war.
Fine.
But I thought, that's too easy.
I'd have just shouted.
How angry would you have been if my top 3 had been 3 dragons?
I'd have just said, where are the White Walkers then in your list?
They don't exist. as you well know.
The White Walker. Oh, fucking all right.
All right, give me any indication of the White Walker, or give me any proof of what the White Walkers have done so far in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Other than the prologue of A Game of Thrones.
Yeah, what did they do in the prologue of A Game of Thrones? Nothing, that's what.
They kill Waymar Royce.
Oh, Waymar Royce. Boo freaking
Bronze Yon's son. If you want to put Bronze Yon on your list and Bronze Yon's
that's like
inclined son that they send to the war.
That is absolute nonsense.
Absolutely not.
That's like saying Samuel Tarly should have been on the list if you're going to put Randall on. It's nonsense.
No, it's not.
It's absolutely the same thing.
Absolutely not.
And also, we don't technically know what kills Waymar Royce.
We see the White Walkers kill him.
We see what you think.
That's why it's so terrifying for Will.
If you want to be that
accurate,
hoodwinked so early on.
Oh my god, we're gonna.
What I think is interesting, neither one of us mentioned is Jack and Hagar.
Or
the Faceless Man.
Point. The Faceless Man.
Do you think they're any good in a proper fight? I have no idea. It's not really what they do, but
it's not really what they do. I think if you're a Faceless Man and you're fighting someone, you've already lost. Because the whole point of the Faceless Man, and this is where I think the show gets it wrong a little bit. They took it in a different creative direction, and it worked for the show, and it was excellent.
Indeed.
But you shouldn't know that a Faceless Man killed someone. That's the whole point.
But
none of the Faceless Man deaths that we see are obviously assassinations, are they?
In the books now, or
in the books?
Yeah, no, 100%. But in the show as well, it's only when Arya starts doing it that it's
true.
Kind of obvious. True. But she sort of perverted the process and just taken it on for herself.
And the way Jack and Hagar kills Amory Lorch, I think.
Yeah, but that's kind of down to Arya.
That is down to Arya, I suppose.
You're right, and this is sort of why I didn't really want to go there. I think because it's not their purpose, but I strongly suspect that they would do quite well in the fight.
I think they would, but I don't think that they would be.
They would never be in a war.
It wouldn't make sense. Like it doesn't make sense for them to be in contention, I think.
No, indeed. Well, on that note, I think good lists.
Yeah.
We're not a million miles away.
No. We need to do more. We need to do more Song of Ice and Fire, I think.
We definitely do, because even in this short segment, we've mentioned so many names that are all worthy of discussions.
I think we.
What happens at the bloody tower? You know,
what happens at the Tower of Joy? You need to explain why you think Robert's Rebellion happened, because I'd quite like to.
That needs absolutely no explaining. It's bloody obvious to anyone who's read the books.
I agree, and the fact that we disagree is a problem.
Yes, you like being wrong. No, that's going to be that will be a great episode. Just how drunk was Thoros when he charged through the breach would be a great episode.
Definitely.
Who will be on the Iron Throne at the end?
Oh, that was someone who I nearly put on my list to piss you off.
What, Daenerys?
Bran
who?
Brandon the Broken.
You were going to put him in the top 10 warriors of A Song of Ice and Fire.
I was going to put him in number 1.
All right. Well, on that note, I mean, why?
Do you want to hear why?
We had such a great time. You know, it was all civil. Brandon Stark.
Yeah.
I really kind of want to hear your justification, but I also don't.
Well, it's a very simple justification. Good luck fighting someone who can control your mind.
Well, he can't, though.
He can. He wargs Hodor.
Yeah. Oh, Hodor. Yeah, great.
And we know that that's a thing that wargs are capable of doing, because we see Varamir Sixskins warg into a woman. I can't remember her name. During his prologue, in which he dies.
Yeah. Have fun mind controlling all those weak-minded fools. No offense to Hodor.
She doesn't appear to be
not sure how that is no offense, but
doesn't appear to be particularly weak-minded. There's no evidence that strength or weakness of mind is required. Anyway.
Yeah, but even if he walks into someone else's brain, that person will be controlled by Bran, who's got no clue how to win. No, just no.
Just commit suicide.
That way. I see. Yeah, okay. Well, okay, fine. Wheel Bran into the middle of the Trident then, and see what happens. Idiot, honestly. On that, I don't know what that was.
Atrocity.
Atrocity, absolutely right. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. No doubt we've said some things that were either objectively wrong or downright offensive. As ever, feel free to let us know, rate the podcast, and leave us a comment or drop us an email at expertiseisoverrated@gmail.com, tweet us at @zeroexpertise, check out our website expertiseisoverrated.podbean.com, or come join us on our Discord server.
If you're lucky, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes, and if you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. Now, in our next episode, in the wake of the completion of Loki, for which we're both very excited, we'll be talking all things MCU television, so WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and Loki, and probably straying into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. Join us then for more nonsense.